Okay, this debate goes way off the deep end into metaphysics.
How do you know 1 + 1 = 2 and not pineapple?
So one of you in the comments recently recommended that I talk to this guy Madeby Jimbob, who actually has a pretty decent sized channel. So without knowing much about him, I checked out the channel, saw he was live, and decided to join in because somebody said that he could have a really good conversation about the science, like evolution and the Big Bang and all these things. So I thought that's what we were going to be talking about. He said he only had about 10 minutes to spare for our conversation, and then we proceed to talk for an entire hour about some of the most, very, very metaphysical topics. I tried to answer to the best of my ability, but I would really like to know, maybe if you guys can steel man his position a little bit more, because I don't fully understand what he thinks is so problematic. He basically wanted to talk about how if you have determinism, then how can you have epistemology or any knowledge of truth? This was an interesting question, but I didn't quite understand where he was coming from with what he was finding problematic.
I've never debated or come across a single atheist who can fluidly and effectively defend my attacks of the deterministic shit show that is the naturalist view that tries to assume that they have access to knowledge.
So yeah, we end up talking about some pretty heavy metaphysics for the first hour or so, and then we finally get to some science topics. Like right there in the last 10 minutes, we end up talking about bendy space-time and gravity, and it gets pretty interesting again. So if you want to skip all the metaphysics, just watch the last 10 or 15 minutes or so. And then, yeah, he kind of comes out as someone that maybe doesn't believe in gravity. So I wish we could have had some actual conversation about science, but neither here nor there. If you guys could please steel man his argument so maybe I understand what his point is better, I would appreciate that. And then if there's anything that you thought that I didn't give a good answer to or that you have a better answer for, I would definitely be interested in hearing y'all's feedback on that. But without any further ado, here's my debate with Jimbob.
You're an atheist, so I'm sure we can talk about lots of science topics. Okay, well, if you're an atheist, I would say that your very name-based theory is very limited. If you're an atheist, that you don't have anything to base anything on. No offense. But there's no base. I mean, you might as well call your name assumption theory. Metaphysical base too? Well, I mean, how could you be an atheist with any account of metaphysics? Do you want to tell us? Jump on. You can come on and tell me how you account for metaphysics from an atheistic view. I'll be nice. I'll be nice! Hey, base theory, Grayson.
Hey, Jimbob.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm not super familiar with your channel. Somebody commented on one of my videos and said that I should talk to you about, theology, evolution, etc.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, that makes sense.
And so right when I checked for your channel, you were live streaming and I hopped in. So, hey, I appreciate talking with you.
Hey, no problem. I mean, being that we have short amount of time because I'm at my 3-hour mark, we should go for something that we can play ping pong quicker with, which means probably not theology. Are you an evolution proponent?
Sure am.
Okay. From your view, are all of our thoughts and beliefs and evaluations effects of natural processes?
Yep.
Okay. So if I have a brain that produces an output called a proposition, and you have a brain that releases an output called a proposition, and both are caused by strict mechanisms, cause and effect, chemistry, etc. Yep. Then what methodology do we have to determine the truthfulness of either?
You have to test whether or not they comport with reality with the empirical observation, measurement, or experiment.
Okay. So if an evaluation or proposition is determined by strict mechanisms called the brain, why wouldn't testing be also?
Could you elaborate on that a little bit? I mean, are you just saying that because ultimately we have to impart information from our senses, that somehow makes it not reliable?
Well, it's not reliable because it's determined. So if my proposition is determined by brain matter and your proposition is determined by brain matter, then the very methodology you call testing would also just be an output of mechanistic cause and effect.
Yeah, it is an outcome of mechanistic cause and effect, but that doesn't mean that it's not a reliable measuring device for like the objective reality.
Well, I know, but that's what's in question. So what you're saying now is that we test things. So we make propositions that are merely effects of our brain. And now you're saying the very methods we use to test those evaluations or propositions are somehow independent of strict cause and effect, meaning the interpretation of the experiments and the data you're saying is independent of just cause and effect.
I would like to clarify that that's not what I'm saying. I don't think that anything lies outside of cause and effect.
Okay, cool. So if nothing relies outside of cause and effect, how do you have access to the truth of two propositions if whatever you come to, including testing, the conclusion of which would also be an effect of a set of cause, like a domino effect?
Why does it being part of a chain of cause and effect mean that it is not, like, that empirical testing is not reliable? I don't understand the logical argument
because the word reliability itself would be also an effect. The experience of coming to reliability would be an effect. How do you escape it?
Why does that require like any, I don't understand what the problem is that it's a part of a cause and effect.
The problem is if you coming to a conclusion is an effect that's caused by something, then you don't have access to the true conclusion of anything.
Why not?
Because whatever you come to is determined by a cause. You have no outside independent access to knowledge.
I don't understand how that follows from the premises.
Okay, let's do it again. A brain, not even a being, not a mind, a brain is a machine, a biological machine. Okay. It produces a proposition that comes in the form of words out of a mouth, right? A statement. Another brain says another statement. Now, from your view, both of those events are caused by the brain.
Yep.
Caused. So that means the propositions themselves are at the effect of the cause, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if both propositions are at the effect of the cause, then the observer who's trying to get to the bottom of which proposition is true or false, their methodology to coming to the truth is also just an effect of something in a causal chain. Okay.
I agree.
So, okay, if you agree, then agreeing, you're just at the effect of some cause in your brain, right?
Yep.
You're not actually reasoning or thinking because you're just at the effect of something.
I don't think that follows. I mean,
it does.
For example, you can like program a machine with like following
with a mind
laws of logic, and then it can go through a logical process without having any kind of agency or free will involved.
Can you program a machine to come up with the wrong conclusions?
Yeah.
Okay, so the machine is at the mercy of another machine called the human brain, right? So what's in question is, how is it that a machine has access to epistemology? The calculator doesn't have access to epistemology. The calculator is designed to produce outcomes, right, consistent with the laws of logic. I'm saying if our use of the laws of logic and thinking and reasoning is all determined like a calculator, because the calculator has no access to knowledge, it just does its thing, we don't either. So if your assumption is that human beings are mechanisms, mechanisms don't produce knowledge.
Yeah, so the difference between like the calculator that's programmed with the laws of rationality and us is that we have senses that sense the world around us. A calculator doesn't.
Right. That's why when you went to the calculator, it's a poor analogy because we designed the calculator to do exactly what we want it to. And the fact that we can design it to do incorrect things means we have access to knowledge. Now, from your view that humans are just calculators, and a calculator can produce false conclusions, I'm asking you, what's your methodology to determine whether a conclusion is true or false?
Right. Again, I agree that brains can produce false statements or claims. Then we test them with empirical measurement or observation or experiment.
Okay, if testing itself, the very activity, is determined by cause,
Yep.
how do you know you're properly testing?
Because I would just define truth as that which comports with reality. I mean, I agree that this is all ultimately cause and effect, but I don't think that that somehow takes away from the truth proposition.
Okay, so if truth is that which comports to reality, then you have access, right? That you experience some effect called comporting with reality, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're just pushing the problem further. If you have access to what comports to reality, then if two people have different experiences of what comports with reality, you couldn't tell me which one was true or not.
You could on an intersubjective basis if you have more than just two people.
Well, no, but then that would just be saying that your interpretation of majority is valid. That your interpretation of it is. Just you keep the thing is right now what you're doing. Hold on, what you're doing now is every time I ask and get closer to the root problem, you push the epistemic basis over to one other thing that's then testable. And so I go, how do you test if testing itself is just the effect of a cause of chain of events? You say, well, you test, you see if it comports with reality. And I said, whatever you find comports with reality is just an effect of your brain. And then you say, well, we need more brains. And now I'm going to say, whatever you interpret the brains, the collective brains, right? Whatever you interpret them saying or doing is just, you're determined to interpret them that way. You understand that the very lens that you interpret what is true, what is reality, what's not reality, the very lens itself is determined from your view. So you don't have access to knowledge because you're looking at yourself as a mechanism, a machine.
I just don't understand why you think that if it's all determined from cause and effect, how that means that we somehow don't have access to knowledge. Maybe
here's why I think that. Here's why I think that is because you can't answer the question, how is it that we have knowledge?
So maybe a specific example will help us out here to go from more abstract to more concrete. A specific example I could give would be like the specific prediction, right? And this is just from somebody's brain. This is just mathematical theory. They had a specific prediction for what the power spectrum of the CMB should look like. That is related to the Big Bang. They said, if the Big Bang is real, then when we measure the CMB, then this is what we should observe, this exact pattern. They predicted it.
How is a pattern? How is a pattern not abstract?
Well, because they were physically measuring it.
No. Measurements are abstract.
Measurements are not physical.
Yes, they are. No, where did you find a thing called a measurement in the physicality as concrete?
Well, measurement is a process that is physical, so.
Well, no. There's things that are happening. The concept of measurement, right? Observation of the external world, these kinds of things. These are not concrete. You're describing something that you see as concrete called the external world. You said, let's go less concrete, but you can't interpret the concrete world, the external world, without abstract concepts. And if you're a mechanism, whatever abstract concepts you're appealing to, you were just determined to appeal to those things. So any of the conclusions that follow, you're also determined to appeal to those. And so we're back to propositions being made by, in your view, a machine called a biological brain that has no account for the mind, that can supersede, use reason to overcome the potential causal things that are going on in the brain. You're basically saying we are just input-output machines.
Yeah. So,
and then I'm saying if that's true, you have no access to even that claim.
So I do agree that like free will is an illusion and that things go deterministically, cause and effect in physics and neurobiology.
So then is truth. Then you have to say truth is an illusion.
Are you like slipping into kind of like a solid
kind of
view
well,
here?
Yeah, well, I'm not flipping. I'm doing an internal critique. The problem is if you say free will is an illusion, How could you exclude truth claims and propositions and conclusions and evaluations from that?
Why would that be part of free will?
Well, because you would have to first assume you have free will to come to conclusions and reject false ones.
Why would I need to assume that first? Why
because there could
do that in a determined...
because again, if you don't have the capability of choosing and denying a false premise by reasoning, or a false conclusion by reasoning, then any conclusion you come to is just the effect of matter in motion. And so again, you're back to the starting problem, which is if all phenomenon that you experience is matter in motion, an effect of matter in motion, right? If that's the case, you coming to a conclusion as an experience would also be an illusory. It would be completely illusory.
I think that me coming to a conclusion based
who's
on
you?
reason,
Who's you?
I think that my brain coming to a conclusion via reasoning and rationality is something that is completely compatible with a deterministic universe.
It's not, because you're assuming that there's someone called you that's not just your brain.
No, I'm actually not making that assumption. It's more it's more of a language thing to express what we're talking about here. But no, I don't think you have to assume that.
Okay. If you're just saying we don't have to assume it, you can't demonstrate otherwise, because here's the thing. If you think we're just a brain, you and me, we're just machines that just happen to understand what we're talking about right now through words and sounds going through the air waves, okay? If you think you're just a mechanism, then any concept you have of you coming to conclusions needs to be an illusion, the same way your own free will is an illusion. So sure. It's incompatible to say, it's inconsistent to say, my free will is just an illusion, but by the way, I come to truth claims and I can trust that.
I don't see the incompatibility there.
Because is the illusion of free will a precondition to come into truth claims?
No.
It's not?
Nope.
Okay.
I think that a computer that has no illusion of free will...
A computer is... No, hold on. A computer is designed by who?
It could be designed by other computers. In this instance,
but okay, what? Oh my gosh, are you serious?
Well, just for this hypothetical, it doesn't matter.
Hold on a second. I asked you who designs a computer, and you said a computer can be designed by another computer. Okay, we'll take that other computer, the first computer. Who's that computer designed by?
So if you want to trace it all the way back, it does get to humans. But the key
a human what?
Here,
no. Hold on a second.
No.
I have to interrupt you. This is the reason why. If you think a human's a computer and just a mechanism, you can't even get back to a human from your view. You have to keep saying a mechanism. And I say, who designed that mechanism? A mechanism. Who designed the inputs and outputs of that mechanism? Another mechanism until infinite regress of mechanisms.
So I think that the issue here is logically semantic. I mean, I'm just using language that you have issues with. But I would agree that ultimately it is all mechanistic. Sure.
Does the computer have access to knowledge, truth? Can it produce truth propositions or conclusions without the human? Without the human?
Yes.
What? A computer can produce propositions without the human?
Yeah. Why would it not be able to?
Because it needs a human to build it and to code what it does. Where are you seeing computers arise from nothing without humans?
I didn't say arise from nothing, did I?
You need a human.
I said that physically, logically, physically, it's completely possible for another computer to design a computer that the computer they designed did not have metrics that was originally designed in the original computer. So you can have a kind of introduction of things that were not originally designed in the original computer by humans. But just again, this is just a hypothetical. I'm just saying, if you have a computer that is capable of making empirical tests of data that has an AI, yes, the computer itself can come to new truth claims that were not already in its programming.
And do you have access to the truth claims without the human being?
Well, I am a human being, so what do you mean by that?
When you say the subsequent computer can produce true conclusions, you don't know their conclusions or they're true without the human evaluation process.
You mean like the computer would have to tell me its conclusions?
Yeah, can a squirrel go up to the computer and go, this thing's spitting out really true conclusions?
Can
Can it? Don't bite that bullet. Please don't bite the bullet. Don't try.
Bullet. I'm not biting that bullet. I was about to say a sufficiently intelligent non-human could, but I don't have an example because I don't know if aliens exist.
Oh, well, if that's what you have to say.
It doesn't necessarily require it to be a human. Like, logically speaking.
Does it require something that has a mind that understands computing?
I don't know. I mean, the computer, without understanding, like, without having a mind, could still come to that conclusion. And, like, you're just saying that it needs to tell another human and go through its empirical process or something. But
no, I'm saying to use the category, a conclusion, and to use the category like true and false, you need something that's not the mechanism.
Not what mechanism? What do you mean?
If a machine produces some, printout facsimile of a bunch of truth statements, I'm saying to even reference the paper that's coming out, let's say in this case, it has like some printer connected to it, to even look at the paper and use terms like truth or false or categories or language or semantics or any of these things, math, I'm saying without the human brain as we know it, the human mind, we don't even know what that thing is, right? So it's, like an animal passing by just hears a machine doing something in the woods. It's not going to walk over to it and evaluate it from the position of a human mind.
Well, yeah, obviously it's not a human mind. It's
okay. So what does it require then for us to observe such a phenomenon and to put it in the category called truth, false, propositions, math?
But what I don't get is why you're saying that
you won't answer. You won't answer that question?
What I'm saying is I don't get why you're saying the computer hasn't already done that before it's given its results off to the human.
Because we know what a computer is. There's no way you can use the example of a computer and not have it be tied habitually to a human being.
But I don't understand though why you saying that the human being is a necessary component for the computer to come to.
Because you said so. Because we both agreed that. You said if you follow it all the way back, you said we come to a human being. We both agree on that.
Just in terms of who made the computer, that's what I.
Yeah. Not what made it, right? It wasn't a what that made it. It was a who, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't understand why that's necessary.
Hold on. It's necessary. It's necessary because you think free will is an illusion, yet it required the intent of a human being to make a computer to do something with intent.
Yeah, I'm saying
like produce.
Look, for this
hold on. Did it require intent to make a computer?
Yeah, obviously. Okay.
So is intent consistent with no free will?
Yes.
Intent is how do you have intent or no intent without free will?
Cause and effect. Your intent is caused.
No. Cause and effect means you don't have intent. Why? Because intent assumes you can supersede the variables. That means the given scenario says I'm likely to do A, and I use my will to not do A.
Okay, well, I don't agree with your definition of intent there, but if you want to use that definition, I can use it for the sake of the argument.
Okay, where is there ever intent without a mind?
By your definition, there's no intent, even with a mind, in determinism.
Well, is there, from your view, how is there intent?
Based on your definition of intent,
no, your view.
No,
your definition of intent. What is it?
My definition of intent just is that you don't. It can be an effect of a cause.
So a goal. Would you make synonymous an intent and a goal?
I'd have to think about it, but not necessarily.
Can you have goals without intent?
No, I don't think you could have goals without intent.
Okay, great. So, is there a goal to anything?
Like objectively?
Yeah. Could you have a goal of finding? Okay. Can you have a goal of finding the truth to a given question?
Subjectively, yes.
Well, no. I mean, let's say there's a group of math students taking a test, and it's their goal to find the correct answer of all of the answers in the test. Are you saying they're only subjectively wanting to find, like, yes, are they choosing and trying to with intent, are they choosing to find the correct answers or not?
Not by your definition of intent. But
I'm not talking about my
definition.
definition.
Okay,
Your
then
definition.
My definition, yes.
Okay, so your definition, intent assumes you can't have a goal without intent, right?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, so if the goal is to score the best on the math test, right? If that's the goal, is the goal itself an effect of the brain?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So the goal is the effect of the brain. Okay. So if someone says their goal is to unalive 3 women with blonde hair this week, okay, are their actions, are they just at the effect of their mind?
Yep.
Okay. And then let's say there's a parallel person who had the same goal and they chose not to do it after some thought.
Okay.
What's the difference between the two?
The second one chose not to do it after some thought.
Wait, they chose to, or they were just at the effect? They didn't really choose anything.
Both, yeah.
No, it can't be both. They either chose or they didn't.
Well, their choice was an effect of a cause. So, yes.
Okay.
It is
Okay.
both.
Okay. Well, no, you're calling an effect a choice when it's really not a choice.
Look, they chose that to not do it, but they could not have chosen otherwise. It was determined by cause and effect.
So not a choice.
You can still choose.
What's a
without
choice?
being able to choose otherwise.
How do you define a choice if you can't choose otherwise?
A choice is a decision that is made.
Decision means to cut off the alternative, literally.
Okay, well, that part is an illusion.
Okay, so if that's an illusion, we're back to the impossibility of knowledge. Why? Because to have knowledge, you have to have the willfulness to pursue knowledge, right? Have you ever run into people who just don't have the will to know the truth?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so do you pursue the truth?
Yeah.
Okay, would you say you're a truth-seeking machine?
Sure.
Okay, and if I asked you, how do you know you're a truth-seeking machine, would your answer be, well, I know it because I'm a truth-seeking machine?
No.
You'd have to say that.
I don't see why I would have to say that.
I just asked you if you're a truth-seeking machine, if it's in your nature to seek the truth. And I asked you, how do you know you came to the conclusion? How do you know you're a truth-seeking machine? What would you say?
Physics, biochemistry, neurobiology.
Well, no, that's not an answer. You're just saying things. If I said, how do you know you're a truth-seeking machine? How do you know?
I would say my conclusion is drawn from the body of evidence in physics, neurobiology, etc.
Okay. And how would you have access to falsities of that body if you yourself are a truth-seeking machine? You only seek truth.
Can you clarify what you mean by having access to falsities of that body?
Yeah. I asked you, you said you're a truth-seeking machine. I said, how would you know that? And you said, well, there's a body of knowledge I could basically appeal to, which is begging the question, means that because you're a truth-seeking machine, that you're properly interpreting the body of knowledge you have access to. Well, why? How do you know? Well, I'm a truth-seeking machine. You see, the body of knowledge I have access to, I properly navigate it because I'm a truth-seeking machine.
Oh, I see. It's because that body of knowledge is backed up empirically, which is reliable.
But by other machines.
It really goes down to reliability.
Okay, and would you say if you're appealing to reliability, then you're making a truth claim about what is and isn't reliable?
Sure.
Okay, so if you're a machine that seeks the reliability of things, how do you know you're arriving at the reliability of things? You're just shifting over the claim. You understand? You're just shifting the claim over to...
If somebody says, when you drop an apple, it will float, and then I drop the apple and it falls, then I know that previous claim was unreliable.
Well, again, we were back to... Now you're appealing to the reliability and interpretation of your senses, which is a different claim.
Well, yeah,
your epistemology, every time I ask you about your epistemology, from your starting assumption that you're just a machine, whatever you appeal to, your senses, your intuition, your history, your past, your concept of the future, your sense of yourself, whatever it is you appeal to, whatever folder you have that you're going to whip out. When I ask you, okay, you're a machine, and everything you do, you're at the effect of a previous domino effect. Mm-hmm. So when I ask, how do you know the effect you're calling a proposition or an evaluation of a truth statement is true? You go back into the effects, other effects.
You mean like testing?
Yeah, another effect.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm asking you, how does one have access to knowledge if knowledge itself is defined by the illusory experience caused by previous molecules in motion?
Why does knowledge being an effect of molecules in motion preclude it from having truth value?
Why? Well, because truth isn't found in molecules.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, where are you going to find the concept truth in a molecule?
Well, I don't believe that abstract concepts are real things that exist independent of physical material.
Well, whether they're independent or not isn't the question of whether they're the same. So if I say the word apple, and out comes from my mouth a sound that perturbates the air and hits someone's eardrums.
Yep.
Is anywhere in the air or the perturbation or the sound or the found the word, the actual apple?
No, it was encoded in that sound, which was then decoded by your brain, which is all a physical process.
Right. So how could encoding and decoding exist from a position that everything is just caused? That requires...
there's no preclusion there. I mean, what's the argument that it would be precluded by cause and effect?
Because the concept of an apple, from your view, would just be the effect of molecules in motion.
Again, you're just repeating yourself now without explaining what the logical argument is.
It's an entailment. The entailment is that if concepts and abstract things like truth or propositions or categories or apples or math or geometry, any of these things, if they're not real from your view, then your interaction with them, right, in evaluating truth claims is illusory, the whole damn thing.
Well, yeah, they're mental events, so yeah, sure.
So truth is illusory.
I mean, I defined it as that which comports with reality.
No, reality. No, hold on. I can't let you go this direction. Dude, hold on a second. If I say truth itself is illusory and you're saying, well, maybe, but it's just what I view it as what comports to reality. I'm saying when you say that, you're just making another truth claim, assuming that there's this thing you interact with called reality and you have access to it.
That's what I was just about to say.
But that's begging the question.
No, that's what I was about to get at before you would cut me off there. I was going to say, you're just going to say that I can only interact with reality through my senses anyway. So it just is like you're getting back into like hard solipsism.
Well, I'm not getting into it. I'm saying your view actually leads to it, which I'm glad you're actually picking up on. But you're not actually picking up on it if I'm just causing it to happen in your brain.
Yeah. So
are you picking up on the entailment of solipsism on your own, or are you just a machine getting to...
Me picking up on it can happen in both determinism or with free will. There's not...
That's begging the question.
No, it's not. You said
it sure is.
No, cause and effect, I can't be picking up on it. I'm saying that
you don't...
Cause and effect,
base theory. You don't have access to what would happen under deterministic view. Why? Because any conclusion you come to about it would be determined. If every conclusion under the mechanistic deterministic view, every single conclusion, every single claim, every evaluation is just the effect of cause and effect, molecules in motion, you don't have access to even do a comparative analysis because you can't know that your effect that your experiences is in fact the truth. To get to the truth, in fact, the entire scientific project, it relies on us with our will using something we assume to be the cause, the independent variable, inserting it and removing it repetitively until we can come to the conclusion that a null one, which is the effect, the cause isn't actually that X. That's interesting. Or it is. And that whole system, right?
Yep.
That system assumes that we have access to knowledge and that we have the will to insert the independent variable and remove it, insert it and remove it.
Yeah.
Not only that we have faculties in time to look back and go, well, the accumulation of this test, inserting the independent variable and removing it over and over again, we come to the conclusion through our abstract philosophy of science, right? The whole category that you reject, that you call it illusory. The very thing you're calling illusory, that abstract category of the philosophy of science, all of its things that are involved, the thing you're calling illusory is necessary even for you to even say, well, we'll test things. So here's the problem. You're rejecting or calling illusory the very categories that you need as a precondition to be true in order to do what you call testing. You're saying, like, we can test things. By the way, the thing where I have to appeal to test, completely illusory. That's why I'm confused when you say, well, all of these things are illusory, but, you know, my sense of coming to truth isn't. Of course it would be. Because all the tools you're using, the metaphysical tools that precede the scientific experiment, those things you reject that are real. They're just effects. So everything's an effect.
Okay, so that was a whole lot. Let me just unpack that a little bit. So I largely agree with how that you've summarized the scientific method. I think that the scientific method has shown itself to be quite reliable, and that reliability is good enough for me, regardless of your metaphysical grounding. But in regards to what you're getting at with the metaphysical grounding, are you trying to say that unless you have some sort of ultimate metaphysical foundation, then you can have no truth claims? Is that what you're getting at?
Truth claims are metaphysical.
Well, yes, but there are alternatives to metaphysical foundationalism, such as infinitism or coherentism.
No. Okay.
That are
well,
equally valid in philosophy.
Well, coherency and correspondence go hand in hand. You can't do correspondence without coherency, but infinitism falls apart because you need a foundation for what's true. If what you find true is a comporting to reality, and that requires the regularity in nature to hold true. Infinitism, there's no logical contradiction of infinitism being true and those laws of regularity completely changing altogether.
Okay.
So that means if your assignment of truth is based on the regularity of nature, but infinitism is your foundation, which the entailment of infinitism is that the regularity of nature doesn't have to follow through. In fact, the law of identity doesn't even need to be necessarily held in place. In which case, if that were the case, how would you even do science or empiricism?
It's just because we don't have a single example to the contrary to even weigh that as an option for the violation of the law of identity. It's just like on empirical reliability basis. Like we could find tomorrow that there's some sort of exception that we observe for that, and then we would have to incorporate that into our framework.
Okay, so is it logically possible that infinite regress is true and your entire model for what you consider to be true is incompatible with the changing laws? So
is it possible that
logically?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
Is it logically okay? Let me do it. Is it logically possible that infinite regress is true, and the laws on which you determine truth could change? Is it possible?
Sure.
Okay, so that means the foundation for truth is up in the air and could be changing, according to your view.
Well, I guess in infinitism there would be no foundation at that point.
Yeah, so infinitism is not a foundation because it could change.
It's an alternative to a foundation, yes. And I just want to clarify that...
Wait, no. If it's an alternative to a foundation, that means it has to be a valid foundation. If it's not a valid foundation, it's not an alternative.
No, sir. It is an alternative that
just doesn't work. that just can't ground truth.
No, actually, that would be incorrect according to the current understanding of metaphysics in the field of philosophy. You can look up this. There's no actual argument.
Field of philosophy.
Go to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
I just produced an argument.
Go to
the argument. Hold on. I'm not going to go search definitions. Philosophers think that men can have babies right now. I'm not going to appeal outside of the conversation. Look, I'll track it again. If infinite regress is true, that just goes back and back and back, and the basis for truth that you're relying on is sense data and the regularity of nature, laws of physics. Mm-hmm. If it's logically possible, if infinite regress is true, if it's logically possible that your laws that you're appealing to could change, that means the truth itself could change. Is that correct?
Sure.
Okay. If the truth can change, you don't have a foundation for truth.
Yeah. I'm saying that the foundation for truth is not logically necessary. There are
logically necessary assumes truth.
No, it doesn't. Not a
okay. So when you say logically necessary, a statement, a metaphysical statement of what's logically necessary, are you not saying a truth statement?
Yeah, but you're not presupposing.
Yeah, but okay. Can you make a truth statement without assuming a foundation for truth existing?
Yes.
Okay, make a truth statement right now that omits a foundational assumption about truth.
Again, I can make any truth statement
anything you want.
Like, again, in metaphysical, infinitism or coherentism, those are two alternate, equally valid views in metaphysics that don't have a foundation for truth statements.
What do you mean by valid?
As in, they are accepted as valid in the field of metaphysics.
What's
what I was citing before is that a consensus that there is a proper argument.
So wait, hold on. Is logic, if what's logically valid determined by consensus?
Well, it's determined by argumentation, which is
so. Wait. So if a majority accepts fallacious argumentation, do we accept the conclusions?
No.
Okay, so that's a contradiction. So when I ask you to make a simple truth statement without assuming a foundation of truth, you said something valid. The term valid, you're assuming the laws of logic, right?
Yeah, like the law of identity would be an example of a true statement.
Okay, law of identity needs to be true for you to make a statement, right?
Well, my statement is the law of identity. Yeah.
Hold on. No, I can't. No, hold on. Can you make any truth statement without assuming at least the law of identity?
Probably not. I couldn't think of one.
Okay, so your previous statement was that we don't need a foundation for truth to make statements about truth, and now you're changing that, right?
No, I'm not changing that.
Oh, okay. So I produced a contradiction, but you're going to double down that you can make truth statements without a foundational assumption about truth?
Well, if you're just saying that the law of identity is my foundation for truth, then you're kind of changing what we're talking about here, I think. Because the law of identity itself does not have, like, a grounding. It's a presupposed axiom.
Okay, cool. So if infinite regress is true, could it be the case that the law of identity of objects and things in the world don't maintain, such that you have an unintelligible universe?
Sure.
Okay. So therefore, your appeal to infinite regress has no epistemological foundation. So you can't rely on it at all.
I don't think that it follows that you can't rely on it just because it's infinitely regressive. Because the reliability comes from our empirical.
Dude, holy shit! If your empirical analysis relies wholly on the regularity of nature, and infinite regress logically allows for the changing at any time, that it's possible logically that the regularity you're relying on could change. I'm saying the truth itself, according to your model, could change. That means the truth is not absolute, that it could change. Do you understand?
Yeah, I agree. I would just need some sort of empirical evidence showing that it
has... Oh, you need the empirical evidence on your model that could change.
Yeah, I would need empirical evidence that it has changed.
Okay, so you're going to try. So if I'm calling out the problem that could affect your very notion of the validity of the empiricism. You're asking for more empiricism to validate the invalidity of empiricism that I've already demonstrated could be unreliable. Is that what you're doing?
It's exactly what I'm doing, yeah, because I think...
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, well, I mean... It's
you don't see a problem with... But you don't see a problem with that.
I don't know. It's reliable
okay.
Until we have evidence that it's not reliable.
Okay, the evidence being more participation in empiricism, the thing that could change under your assumption that infinite regress is true.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I mean, maybe if you were able to better spell out why that would be problematic.
I don't even understand a better way I could possibly state it. I'll try it one more time, just because I'm charitable. Okay? If infinite regress is true, and you agree the laws of nature, laws of physics, the regularity in nature, the law of identity, the identity of things in the world could change logically. That's possible.
Possible, yes.
Right? It's possible.
Yep.
And your basis for truth is empiricism, right?
Yep. The reliability
figuring out what
of empiricism, yeah.
reliability, but reliability being something you're assuming to be the case in a world where it could not be the case.
Could you unpack that a little bit? Like,
could reliability... Okay, if the regularity of the laws of nature could change, then your concept of reliability would change as an entailment, right? Consequence.
So just so I can understand what that actually means, are you saying, like, I do a certain experiment over and over and over and I get the same results, but in reality, that's not actually happening, and it's just my sense tricking me into thinking I'm getting the same results?
No, I'm saying you having the experience of reliability of doing testing assumes that the regularity in nature is true.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that if all we would need is any shred of empirical evidence showing that it's not the case that these things are universal.
Okay, cool. So if empiricism itself relies wholly on the regularity of nature, lawfulness.
I don't know if it does.
Okay, so can you give me an example logically of how empiricism, you could engage in empiricism without the regularity of lawfulness?
I think that the regularity is established just by repetitive empirical testing. I mean, if you're not able to empirically test reliably, then you would get the results.
Empiricism doesn't produce regularity. Regularity allows for empiricism. You don't produce regularity by doing stuff.
That sounds like a distinction without a difference to me.
Oh, really? Is it a precondition before you are a grown adult and you're doing science? Is it a precondition that the regularity in nature holds such that you can investigate it? Or let me get this. When you turn 14 and you reach puberty and your voice cracks, you suddenly behave the laws of nature into existence.
I don't know what that example means.
Do you do an interpretive dance such that the law and the regularity of nature become alive with your twirling?
No.
Okay, so the laws of nature actually are preconditions for you to even be born, correct?
Yeah.
So are the laws of nature and the laws of physics preconditions to doing empiricism?
In certain ways, but they don't have to be reliable.
I didn't ask about reliability. You just said just a second ago that you don't see a distinction, that they're one and the same. That's what you said.
You're saying that empiricism produces reliability, yeah, because like if you just repeat the same thing over and over again, you've produced a reliable result.
What's reliable? There's something that's reliable before you can engage, correct?
No, not
like tomorrow. You mean like tomorrow? Can you test right now whether tomorrow's going to happen? Oh, please don't say yes. Oh my God. The fact you have to think about this shit is alarming. No offense. It's just alarming.
Well,
okay.
It's just I mean, I don't know. These are not the kind of normal questions.
I know.
So, yeah,
I know.
I would think about my answers. Sorry for thinking.
I'm being a dick. I'm being aggressive right now because I'm getting short on patience.
What I was trying to get out here was that you could test if these laws were unreliable. If you were doing the same things and getting unreliable results, like
No.
you could test that.
No. Hold on a second. Laws are something. If they're laws, right? We observe them. We just observe them. They're lawful, right? We assume that they'll continue.
I would say
we don't test a law into shape. We observe law, right? And then we see, and we could try to manipulate. And so this is the difference between law and theory, is that law, like a theory, never becomes a law from testing. Like we tested the shit out of it until it became a law. No.
I agree.
Theories exist because laws exist. Like they're not the same thing, though. We need law to do testing, right? If suddenly law went away and tomorrow wasn't like today, the test we did yesterday couldn't be, we couldn't know, we wouldn't know how to compare. There's no comparative analysis possible unless the regularity maintains. Yeah?
Yeah, I agree with that,
Okay.
but I think that you can test the regularity itself.
No, you could observe it, right? But there's no test that suddenly the regularity just stops. We're just observing, right? It's not like we introduce an independent variable to test whether hot goes to cold. We can try to manipulate it and maybe contain it, but hot always goes to cold. High pressure always goes to low pressure, right?
Yeah, the difference between laws and theories is one's a how and one's a why.
But the theory is actually an explanation given that we have access to an independent variable. So we observe something that's a phenomenon and we go, what's causing that? And then we think up of an independent variable that we can, as the scientists with will and minds, could interact with and interfere. Laws we don't interfere with. That's why we call them laws.
Yeah, okay, I can agree with that.
Okay, so there are preconditions that we just assume. We didn't test them into existence. The laws preceded our ability to test and engage with anything in the external world. And if suddenly those laws were suspended and the laws of identity didn't hold and nothing held true, we wouldn't have testing, I'm saying. There would be no basis to test anything. And so what I'm saying is, in a hypothetical theoretical world of infinitism that makes the obliteration of lawfulness possible, that your very standard for what truth is, the very standard, not even just a description, the very standard for truth could be changing. And from that view, nothing, you're not really, you don't have a standard for truth because it's just something that's up for change.
Can I ask you how you grapple with this? Because wouldn't it
Sure.
be the case in your view, right? I assume that God is the foundation of all these truths. So God could change the law of identity or any of these laws at any moment.
No.
And he could change all of this. So
No, I wouldn't
how
say
do
that.
you
No.
not have the same problem?
No, because I would say that that's not possible, because if God ontologically is the standard for truth, you couldn't violate truth. That would be an act against the very nature of God. It's an impossibility on my view. So the
God's
violation of the
all-powerful?
all-powerful, what does that mean to you?
That he can
How could you
do anything.
Okay, if he's all-powerful, then the law of identity holds true.
Well, if he's all powerful, he could change the law of identity, you know?
No, that would assume that there's something else true that's not him.
So he does not have the power to change the law of identity.
No, that would be a contradiction. So, if God is truth, right, then the law of identity being some aspect of him, or like in theology, maybe an uncreated energy of God, then how could he? That would be like saying asking like the nature of something to change, like suddenly the avocado is a lamb, right? That it violates the law of identity. So if you can't be, how could you be all powerful and violate the law of identity such that even the concept of power or being would fall apart? Like,
I mean,
that's like
it just seems if he was all powerful, he could also cause contradictions too.
Well, to say there's a contradiction means that the law of identity did hold true. So you can't violate the law of identity because pointing it out would assume the law of identity.
Okay, so we did find something that God cannot do.
Not in capability. It's not a. You're collapsing. This is a category error. You're saying that the capability of performing an absolute contradiction is somehow a weakness of God, when I just demonstrated that the very contradiction isn't logically possible.
Yeah.
So something that's not something that's not logically possible isn't. You can't just reframe it as like capable possible, incapability. Like logically possible, capability, incapability actually assumes laws of logic. And so what you're saying is like, well, can't I just, if God is so powerful, why can't he just disappear himself, basically? Why don't you just say that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if he's all powerful, I would think he could do literally anything, including.
Well,
like,
what do you, okay, could it be the case that you can't possibly conceive logically what it would be to break logic without assuming logic?
But God could, right?
Well, let's say in the best way you could imagine it, God broke logic.
Yeah.
To state that there is a state of affairs called broken logic would assume logic. You couldn't even point to it, right? You couldn't even point. This is the problem, is that it's like the vegan. They asked me, well, if there was a world in which a human wasn't a human, would you still treat them like they're human? And you're asking a hypothetical that requires the complete abandoning of logic. So I'm saying that even asking the hypothetical assumes the thing you're trying to flip over. It's like saying, like, if I asked you, is truth absolute? What would you say?
I don't know.
Well, based on infantism, it's not absolute, because what you call truth is a description of reality. And if reality is based on the regularity of nature, and that could change, you don't really have access to absolute truth, because it's just descriptive of reality. Now,
the reason I don't know is because I don't know, like, out of the three possible options of infinitism, foundationalism, and coherentism, I don't know which is
okay.
the correct one.
But if you say I don't know, is there something that's absolutely true such that even that answer is possible?
I don't know.
So,
be honest.
Okay, are the laws of thought absolute?
Are there laws of thought?
No. Are the laws of logic absolute and unchanging?
Oh.
Let's go with the law of identity, because that's what you've been referencing. Let's go with that.
To my knowledge, but yeah, I've got no idea if that's really the case or not. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I've got no idea.
Now let's say hypothetically you were like, well, let's just test it. Let's say we thought we violated the law of identity. We were able to do it. Okay. Now, would that require that the law of identity still maintain? Would it be a contradiction?
Violated?
Yeah.
No, it was violated.
Okay, so what would it be? What would you and I be such that we can point to the violation of the thing required to observe violation?
It wouldn't be violated for us, but we could still point to an area where it is violated, right?
Okay, well, this is the thing. If the violation of the law of identity occurred and it no longer held, I'm saying that you couldn't even point to its violation, because that would require the law of identity. Do you understand?
I mean, if we just show a violation, we've shown that the law of identity isn't universal, but that just means that it can still hold true in certain areas, but not in others.
In what area does the law of identity not hold?
I don't know enough about about the philosophy of quantum mechanics to know if a quantum superposition is seen as a violation of identity.
Well, okay, if you're going to go to that, I'm saying something that you actually have access to, because that example actually points to the experiment the mental experiment I'm doing now, is that if you were to say, here's a particle in one place and the same particle in another, you still have the law of identity of that particle. So even if you said the duplication or the multiplicity of this single particle being in two spots at once, you're still assuming that there's a thing called a particle and that they're the same. So it almost seems like it kind of demonstrates exactly my line of questioning, which is if there's any place you think the law of identity doesn't hold, you're assuming the law of identity by pointing to it.
There's certain kinds of like entangled superpositions where the actual identity of the entity in question, like the particle, would be like multiple different states coexisting at the same time.
And a state being an isolated thing that's not another state, right?
So you're saying that the law of identity still holds even though they have like multiple identities at once?
Yeah. Isn't that interesting that the multiplicity of identity is still logical, aka
so
a triune
even though,
Godhead?
like, it basically like even though an entity can be in a superposition of two contradictory identities, like A and not A at the same time, you're saying that law of identity still holds because we are differentiating between A and not A?
Well, yeah, you're still using the law of identity to try to collapse it. And so even if you said A's over here, and in this condition, A is not B, you're still appealing to identity A and identity B, or identity A and identity A. And so every time, even at this like wacky, fuzzy logic world, that you're still held by some identity law, and you couldn't actually theorize otherwise. Like if the law of identity actually collapsed, the only demonstration of it that would I find compelling is just fart sounds.
All right. And so you find that all of this, I mean, we've been talking for a bit more than 10 minutes, but just you find that all of this is like basically a self-contradictory position of atheism?
Yeah, I'd say atheism has no foundation for truth, and they have to say it's subjective from one position, or they have to say it's just what comports with reality, which assumes they have access to reality, that it's not changing, right? And it also assumes that universal mechanistic determinism isn't true, by which all of our evaluations are determined anyway by molecules mashing up. And I've never debated or come across a single atheist who can fluidly and effectively defend my attacks of the deterministic shit show that is the naturalist view that tries to assume that they have access to knowledge. And almost every time, by the way, not to call you a normie, but every time I ask for an example of a mechanism that produces knowledge, they point to a computer or a calculator, which I guess in the moment they don't realize is the product of a mind.
Well, how does that affect its ability to come to truth, though?
Does the calculator have an ability to come to truth?
If it was programmed to do such.
That's right. And programmed by who?
A human, but why does that matter?
Because the human needs to have access to what a truth claim is and what an accurate description of an outcome is, given 1 + 1 = 2. And so if it's just determined, right, what if a brain came along that wanted to program a calculator that said 1 + 1 = G, or refrigerator? Let's say refrigerator. Yeah, no. How do you know if it's true or not?
Because you can just add 1 to 1 and see what you get, and it's not.
So if a calculator was made by another brain that was caused to make this calculator, given its inputs, and the calculator said 1 + 1 = pineapple, I'm asking you, given that they have the similar sources, human brains, and those human brains are determined, how would you have access to which calculator is saying the truth?
I just have one, I add another one, and I see what I get.
Yeah, that assumes you know the answer's 2, right?
I mean, I'm testing to see if the answer is 2 or refrigerator. Or
so what's the difference between your brain as a machine testing and the brain that produced 1 + 1 = pineapple? What's the difference? Why is yours right?
Well, we're getting different outcomes. That's the difference.
Yeah. Why is yours right, though? Why is yours right? Why is your evaluation of it correct?
Because I test my outcome and I don't get pineapple.
That's making the claim. I'm saying how. You're saying 1 + 1 doesn't equal pineapple, and you test it. I'm saying, how do you know 1 + 1 = 2 and not pineapple? Not that you know it. I'm saying, how do you know it?
My knowledge of it comes from my testing. Like, I did 1 + 1 and I saw if it equals 2 or pineapple or whatever.
Well, the other guy tested it too.
Okay.
Okay. He tested it with his calculator.
Oh, the calculator that he programmed, I see.
Yeah. So you see? So he tested with his calculator. 1 + 1 = pineapple. You tested it with what your method is. And I'm asking you, what's the difference and why should we value your conclusion that 1 + 1 = 2 and not his?
Because I didn't rely on a calculator. I would just use rocks or sticks or my fingers or anything like in intersubjective reality that both me and the pineapple guy can both agree these two things are real. I talk to him. I say, hey, you agree that these two stones are real? He said, yeah. I said, okay, one stone plus one stone equals 2.
Okay, so if we developed a society that agreed otherwise, right? So you're saying truth is an agreement?
Sure. Yeah, intersubjective agreement.
Okay, so 1 + 1 doesn't actually equal 2. It just temporarily does based on agreement, right?
Sure. Everything is provisional. I mean...
Okay. What about geometry?
Yeah, what about it?
Okay. Is a right angle always 90 degrees, or could we make it 33?
Yeah, we could, sure.
Okay. Okay, so how about the scientific method? Could we just change that based on agreement?
Yeah, but it wouldn't be as reliable anymore.
Well, no. What if we just fundamentally change what we just considered reliable? Can we do that by agreement?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
why not? Wait, hold on.
Because your testing of reality is either going to be one thing or the other, just like the pineapple
guy.
guy.
Okay, so here's the thing. Your testing of reality is based on math and the descriptive element of math, which is an extension of logic, by the way, and you can't change logic. So if it's the case that you know the truth about reality based on how it's described mathematically, and you just admitted that we can change the mathematical description of reality, but now you're saying you can't fundamentally change this other thing that requires that description. No, based on your view, you can describe a new reality.
Yeah, so I don't think that the reality, I don't think that reality is fundamentally, like, if we changed aspects of our math, I think our math would just be wrong. I don't think you could change reality that way.
Okay, so then it's not an agreement then. So math incorrectly describing reality can't be agreeably correct then. Neither can 33-degree right angle. Another contradiction.
No, I mean, when I said that you could just change right angle to 33 degrees, I'm saying you could do math where that is the case. It would just be wrong. And when we compare it with
I'm saying change it and be right. Just an agreement that it's right. That's what I'm pointing to.
Then no. I mean, in a Euclidean space, that would not be the case.
Okay. So there is some objective truth that doesn't change.
Well, it doesn't change in the sense that we've never observed it change.
Okay. In order to observe something changing, the things that's in question that could change, right? You need those things. This is the problem. It's like when people say the bendy space-time. I always ask, in what space and time are you observing something that's changing that you need those things to even reference the changes in magnitude of? So if I say, are there fundamental things that can't be changed in order to describe reality or to test reality? And I hope after this conversation that you at least concede there are preconditions that need to be true or assumed before we can do something called testing and describing reality. Okay.
My point,
I'm saying from the atheist perspective, you can do all the describing and all of the empiricism you want and all the scientific investigation you want. In fact, it's valuable and useful. I'm saying all of the things that you have to assume as preconditions, you can't account for.
Yeah, my point is that those assumptions have shown to be reliable. That's why we continue to use them.
Yeah, okay. Before we go into a full loop, I'm going to say I'm saying because reliability assumes the things that are the preconditions in this case. Regularity in nature, math, logic, that minds exist, that you aren't me, there's an external world, things operate a certain way. These are the things that are preconditions that for you to test things. Okay, so reliability requires a set of preconditions. I'm saying from your view and from the atheist view, you can manage to pragmatically interact with reliability. Okay, I'm not taking that away from you. I'm saying you can't account for the preconditions for reliability.
Oh yeah, for sure. I wish that I had known that was your point way earlier. But yeah, I'd agree that there are fundamental like presupposed axioms of logic that you have to rely on to do empiricism and establish reliability. I can agree with all that.
Right. And so if you take an atheistic approach, though, then reliability itself isn't actually reliability. It's just like it says Matt Dillahunty, well, it seems to be the case. It seems to be the case. This whole thing is just an assumption. It's ad hoc epistemology. And you might be okay with ad hoc epistemology, and you might say reactively, you might even be thinking it right now, well, no, I'll just test it again. No, I'm saying under your view, the entire structure of testability is founded on something foundationally that you can't account for, that you borrow.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm saying, you agree. So, and I'm saying more explicitly that you borrow it from the theist view.
That I don't know is the case, but I just want to make the point that the system that you just described is good enough.
Good enough is good enough for who? That's
me.
what Matt Dillahunty says that too. I'm saying it's ad hoc, and so I'm saying good enough means, well, I can just kind of live my life. Well, I'm saying that's an incomplete worldview. So based theory, if you want to use the word based, I highly recommend revisiting this conversation when it's posted and looking further. And if you want to be based, that means there's a foundation. If I just pointed out and you agreed that the foundation you need to do your epistemology you can't account for, I'm telling you it's not based. You should call yourself almost.
Okay, well, I mean based just as the opposite of cringe, by the way. That's all I mean by based.
Well, okay.
And I just want to say, like, I wasn't expecting necessarily to have like a full metaphysical conversation with you. I did enjoy it, but if you ever want to talk about bendy space-time or evolution or any of the cool science stuff that I am actually really into, I would love to have that conversation as well.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to ask you one question, though. What's space-time made out of such it's bendable?
It is actually a huge question in physics right now about whether or not space-time is fundamental or emergent, and it seems to be emergent. So that is the direction that the physics is leaning.
Well, I asked what it's made out of such that you can say something is bending.
Yeah, we don't have a theory for the emergence of space-time at the moment. There are only like guesses that I could offer you to that question. So like the question is, I don't know, but we can empirically establish the curvature of space-time.
Oh, so the thing you're establishing is something you can't observe, and if you could observe it, you could actually point to its physical properties.
Well, no, you can observe it. Gravitational lensing, gravity waves, gravitational.
Wait. Is gravity space-time?
Yeah, gravity is the curvature of space-time, yeah.
Okay, so the thing you're looking at, you call gravity, another reified concept that you can't actually physicalize or make concrete. You're observing the bending of what?
Oh, we can do that.
What'd you do?
You can point to the physical nature of gravity.
No, you can point to the effects of what you assume to be the cause, right? So the difference is if we both agree that we observe an effect, does it follow that you know the cause?
No, it only follows that the effect is in line with your predictions based on your hypothesis. Okay,
but I could not impose the concept of gravity in bendy space-time, and if I have enough observation, I can predict things too, right?
No, you wouldn't be able to do that.
I can't predict by observation? Are you sure about that?
Not without the mathematics of general relativity, you could not.
Well, let's say I did the mathematics and I came to the same conclusions of general relativity, but I just didn't assume something called gravity. That's not logically possible?
You'd have to show me that the math by which that is possible, because if it's just general relativity, then all you're doing is changing the name.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. Do we observe mass attract mass?
Yeah.
Is the hypothesis mass attracts mass?
Sure.
Is the conclusion mass attracts mass?
That's what you measure, yeah.
Okay, and that's
I guess
a valid and is that a valid scientific endeavor?
Yeah, it reifies your hypothesis.
Okay, so if the observation is mass attracts mass, and the hypothesis is the observation, and the conclusion is also descriptively the observation, I'm not sure what you're testing for.
You're testing whether mass attracts mass.
But if mass attracts mass is the observation, isn't that already established because you just observed it and described the conclusion?
No. So, for example, you can look
what?
up. You can look up in the sky.
Wait a second. Wait.
I can explain what I meant. Okay. You look up. You see mass attracting mass in orbits when you look up in the sky, and then you say, I should predict that these two, 50 milligram weights should attract each other because mass attracts mass. Then you control for things like electrostatics, and you see that the mass does attract the mass. You measure that result and reify your hypothesis.
Okay, so let's say you did the Cavendish experiment, quote, right?
Yep. That's what I was referring to.
Right. If the two objects still moved toward each other was the phenomenon you saw, how would you know that it's not mass attracting mass if that's the hypothesis?
If your hypothesis was that mass does not attract mass?
No, your hypothesis is mass attracts mass, right? That's what you're testing for?
Yep.
Even though that's your observation. If you're testing for mass attracts mass, right? Now, I'm asking you, if you saw the same phenomenon in the experiment, how would you know mass wasn't attracting mass?
How would you know the opposite of your observation?
Yeah. How would you know if the phenomenon was the same, the balls go toward each other, but it wasn't mass attracting mass? How would you know that?
You would need to test that alternative hypothesis. Like if you had some other explanation for why you were getting that effect, you would need to formulate it, predict it with a mathematical quantity such as relativity or Newtonian gravity. And you would need to then test it to see if it's as accurate as gravity. Okay,
but here's the thing. How could you possibly do that test, right, if the thing you're testing for is if mass is going toward each other? How could mass attract mass and there be an instance where mass isn't going toward each other? That's my point, is that this is what's the sneakiness of the whole concept, is that because the observation is described exactly as the hypothesis and the conclusion is exactly as the hypothesis and the observation, there's no way to observe this phenomenon of objects moving toward each other. And if the hypothesis is mass attracts mass, if mass doesn't attract mass, but it's true objects go toward each other, you could never remove the mass as the independent variable.
I see. So yeah, all you need to do is vary the independent variable. So you just vary the mass and you see if that affects your results, and then you can know that the mass itself is what is causing that effect.
No, that would still be they would just make the experiment now about how would you know it's actually the mass doing that, right?
Because you've isolated it as a variable.
No, I'm saying if it was the case that the phenomenon was the same, right, you could never remove the mass as an independent variable. What I'm saying is, in an experiment, you have to be able to introduce and remove the causal variable. But if it's an experiment where you can't possibly remove and reintroduce the variable, and your answer is just to change the quantity of the variable, then you don't really have access to the variable itself being the cause. You just have a variation of the phenomenon.
Right. So then you would need a rival hypothesis of another variable that could be the explanation, and you test those two against each other.
Well, no, I'm saying you could never test for the absence of mass, right? Because you always have the mass present. And so I would say there's no possible way to know. That's not a viable hypothesis because whatever you're pointing to always involves mass. You'll never see the phenomenon without mass.
No, I mean,
how could you possibly see the phenomenon without mass?
You would just use light.
Light what?
Light itself. It doesn't have mass. So you can use light instead of like your weight. See if light would also. Yeah.
How would you observe that bendy spacetime through the observation of light?
Well, you said how can you eliminate mass from your experiment if you were to do like the Cavendish experiment with light instead of these massive objects?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not sure how you could look at light and say some X is causing light to behave without assuming, that something else is actually at play and not mass. So, anyway, I gotta wrap this up. The last thing with the Cavendish that I never have answered is that when you're hanging balls from a string and they want to go down, right? You're assuming mass attracts mass is already in play, right?
Yep.
Okay. So what I'm saying is if the mass of the Earth is massive and the increase of mass and proximity increases the attraction, then what you're saying with that little experiment is that 100-pound balls are overcoming the attraction of the Earth to try to kiss each other.
Well, they're in different directions. So what do you mean you're overcoming it? Like if you were to draw the
different vectors still means overcoming.
If they're perpendicular, then no.
No. If a ball is trying to move downward, right?
But it's prevented from moving downward by like the actual, I guess the string in the traditional Cavendish experiment.
I know, but wouldn't there still be an attraction that wouldn't let it move left and right?
There would be an attraction, but it's perpendicular to the direction that the mass is in.
So I'm asking, how is it that two masses of 100 pounds, let's say, are able to overcome the downward pull of a much larger mass?
You just sum up all the vectors affecting that object, and then you'll see that there is a net. Like the up and the down are canceled out. But
what do you mean canceled? No, they're not. They're not canceled out because the ball is still hanging.
Yeah, so that's why it's canceled out. You have an up and a down vector, and then you also have a left and right vector.
Okay. Here's a question. How is it that the 100-pound balls can overcome the downward vector with a horizontal vector?
That's not overcoming the downward vector at all.
Okay, is it not? So the ball hanging with a straight line, pulling the torque of the string downward, you're saying that force isn't still at play?
No, that force is still at play the whole time.
Then it's not equalized.
It's not necessary to overcome it.
It's not. Okay, so if a force is acting on a ball, it's not necessary for another force to act on it. Isn't that inconsistent with all of Newtonian physics?
That's not what I'm saying, though. I'm not saying that.
You just said that.
That's not what I just said. I said
you just said it.
You can rewind the tape. That's not what I said. I said it's not necessary to overcome it. That doesn't mean that you just have to magically not affect the ball or something. I'm saying like all those forces are having an effect on the ball, and the motion of the ball is a result of the additive sum of all of those vectors.
Okay, so you're saying if a bunch of balls are all trying to fall to the ground, but they're not, they're suspended by a string, but they're still pulling downward, given the tightness of the string, we know this, right?
Yes.
That's still a force in play, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so if that's a force in play, do you agree that the force between a much larger mass and that ball is stronger?
Yeah.
Okay, so if the mass of the ground and the ball is much stronger, based on the theory, than the attraction of the balls horizontally, how does it not follow that the horizontal attraction is not overpowering the downward attraction?
Because the
how would that be possible?
Directions. So, for example, if you were to try to do the Cavendish experiment with another small ball on top of it in the opposite direction of gravity from the Earth, then you would not observe correct.
Okay, hold on.
Because it would not-
If there's a 600-pound dude hanging from some crazy ass hammock, right? And you're saying to me, "Wow, this guy's fat. He's attracted to the earth. He's about to fall, but he's suspended." Are you saying that it's not going to require me to exert a force greater than what's already in play to move him horizontally?
Yes.
You're saying I don't need a force.
You don't need a force greater than the force of gravity downward. Yeah.
So what's moving it then?
Whatever force you're applying, it just doesn't need to be a greater force than the force downward, because the vectors aren't
Okay.
Like,
Okay. Maybe you're right about this. It seems to me that if there's a force in any direction, that you need to compensate for and overcome that force. I'm not saying it's like I'm saying that
example,
what does greater mean? Being that it still requires some threshold of force. Are you saying that the force? You're saying that the force of the balls attracting horizontally, is not greater than the downward force pull.
Exactly. Yes. So
it's not greater.
Real quick, illustrate with the example, right? If you've got that fat guy hanging on like a little one string, maybe not a hammock, so that he can sway to and fro on a pendulum.
Okay.
If you were to lift him up, that would require you to have a force that was greater than his weight. But if you were just to push him to the side, you don't need that strong of a force to just push him so he starts swimming.
Okay, I got it. So we're using his weight though.
What do you mean using his weight?
Like we need help though. So what the help is, right, would be like a pulley system in this case, is that the fact that the ball is hanging and attached to something that can spin easily, right? Would that play into why it's easy to attract to move it?
All that does is cancel out cancel with the downward force. I mean, you're just applying an upward force to keep him suspended on the pendulum.
Okay. All right. I'll grant that. But it's still a little fishy to me based on the first assumption that a valid scientific experiment, from my view, because I appeal to a classical take of what's the scientific method is that when we observe something and we want to get to a theory, the observation can't also be the hypothesis and the conclusion. And in this case it is, but I digress. I have to go. I really appreciate this exchange, and it wasn't 10 minutes. So
yeah. Thanks for giving me more than 10 minutes. I had fun.
Of course. Hey, no problem. Me too. Thanks a lot, Grayson.
All right. Thanks, Jimbob.
Cool.